Hi everyone, today we are going to cover lecture 4 of Principles of Microeconomics. In this chapter, we're going to talk about consumer surplus, producer surplus. These are some new concepts. We're also going to talk about the different types of market failures and how efficient and inefficient markets look like. So starting from today, these are new materials. If you took a macro class before, these are topics that you probably did not see before, probably some but not everything. Okay, so these are new materials, so make sure you understand everything. Okay, so efficient markets, we in our previous few classes or video lectures we said that efficient market is the ultimate goal of economics, right? In economics we want to have efficient markets. So why is that? What are the benefits of an efficient market? So the benefits include it produces the maximum output of desirable item with a given input, because in an efficient market output is maximized, so we get the maximum output of a good with limited amount of resources. Second, we achieve productive efficiency. That means market provides maximum output with the minimum resource amount and at minimum cost. So that's a good thing for the producers and businesses. And finally, another benefit of efficient market is we achieve allocative efficiency or economic efficiency. Again, you know these terms by now probably, but allocative efficiency is when you have efficiency on the producer side and at the same time consumer satisfaction or consumer utility is maximized. So when we have an efficient market, we have maximum output with limited resources, cost is minimized, so we have productive efficiency, and customers are also happy to their maximum point, so we also have allocative efficiency. So equilibrium market will not create any shortage or surplus. Whenever we have an equilibrium in the market, you saw it in last lecture also, in lecture 3, when we have equilibrium, the quantity demanded is equal to your quantity supplied. There is no shortage or there is no surplus in the market. However, when we have inefficient markets, and there are, most of the time we will be facing with inefficient market, and as economists and as students of economics, we need to know how to correct these inefficiencies, because inefficient markets are not good for the society, right? We want all the consumers to be happy, and we also want the businesses to be efficient, right? So we have to know what makes a market inefficient and how we can deal with this. Okay, so inefficient market is also known as the disequilibrium of the market, and it causes market failure. Okay, disequilibrium is present when consumers do not pay full price and suppliers do not pay, and or suppliers do not pay the full cost of production. Okay, so when consumers, we do not pay the full price, and if suppliers do not pay the full cost of production. So ultimately, market failure leads to an over allocation, which means we might have a surplus, or under allocation of goods and services, which means we might have a shortage in the economy, and with the loss of potential output and loss of potential customer satisfaction. So under a market, when a market is inefficient, it leads to market failure, which eventually causes over allocation or under allocation of resources, which causes either loss of output or loss of potential customer satisfaction. So now we will introduce another concept called Pareto optimality. This is very important. You need to know what Pareto optimality means and how we can represent it in terms of the PPF. Okay, the production possibility frontier, which we saw in chapter 1 and chapter 2. So Pareto optimality is related to that, so make sure you understand that. Okay, so in the early 1900s, the new classical theory suggested that in the economy, greater prosperity and satisfaction of individual, so when you have greater satisfaction of consumers and greater prosperity of individuals, only then you have a greater or a more prosperous society. So basically what they're saying is, as if consumers are more happy, the economy will prosper more. Okay, and then it creates interplay with market forces and creates value added for a maximum output for society and maximum individual benefit without disadvantages to others' welfare. So this is the most important one. What Pareto optimality means is that it will create value for others, or let's say it will create value for me, and it will give me maximum satisfaction without the expense of others. So there is no opportunity cost in this case. Only when there is no opportunity cost, then we are going to have Pareto optimality. When my satisfaction is increased and the output of a good that I am getting is maximized, and this is not at the cost of any other people, then we achieve Pareto optimality. Okay, so that is the main concept of Pareto optimality. Now this can be illustrated through the PPF. So you need to know when we are going to have Pareto optimality in and how we can represent it in a PPF. Okay, so let me do the diagram so you guys understand how we can figure out what a Pareto optimality is. So remember, let's say it's the increasing cost PPF, and let's say we have two clothes. Remember, PPF can only assume there are two clothes in the economy. So let's say on the x-axis we have clothing, on the y-axis we have computers. Okay, let's say these are the two goods we are looking, and let's say the PPF looks like this. All right, now we have a couple of points. Point A is 9 computers and 2 clothings. Okay, then let's say we have point B. We have 7 computers and let's say we have 6 clothing. Okay, then we have point C. Let's say we have 8 clothing and we have 6 computers. Okay, then we have point D. Let's say we have 10 computers, 10 clothings and 2 computers. Okay, and let's say we have another point. Actually, I'm sorry, let me label this as point E, so it's so you can relate it to the slide we are doing. Okay, let's say this is point E. No, sorry, give me a second, let me fix this, because I don't want you to confuse. I want this diagram to match with the PowerPoint slide. Okay, so let's say this is A, B, and we have E here, and let's say this is C, and then we have a point D. Okay, let's say we have a point D, and this is 4 clothing. Let's say we have 4 computers. Okay, so we are given with this production possibility frontier with 5 different points: A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, now based on our knowledge before, we know the points A, B, E, and C. These are all productively efficient. From the producer side, this is efficient because we are at the maximum output possible. We are operating on the line, so we are at the maximum possible output combination. So we are productively efficient. We do not have any information about consumer utility because this does not give us any information whether consumers are happy at this point or not. It will depend. Okay, but if you remember, point D is an inefficient point, right? It is operating below the curve, which means the resources are not fully utilized and output is not maximized. Okay, so when we say Pareto optimality, so this D represents inefficiency. Okay, and when we say we want to achieve Pareto optimality, it means we will move from point D to a point where output of both computer and both clothing will go up and there won't be any cost to others. Okay, so what it means is, if we move from, let's look at this, if we move from point D to point B, what's happening? At point D we have 4 clothings and we have 4 computers, right? And at point B we have 7 computers and we have 6 clothings. So both at point B, clothing and computer both are going up. right? So this, if we move from point B to point D, this represents Pareto optimality, because we are achieving greater number of computers and clothings, and there is no opportunity cost. We are not increasing the quantity of clothing at the expense of computers, or we are not increasing the quantity of computers at the expense of clothing. Both the quantity of clothing and computers are going up. Okay, now how about if we move from point D to point E? At point E, we have 8 computers and we have 6 computers. So even if we move from point D to point B, D to point E, that is also Pareto optimality. Because why? You tell me. Because the reason is, we have greater number of clothings and greater number of computers, right? We have 6 computers now and we have 8 clothing, so the quantity of both the products have increased, and there's no opportunity cost. So if we move from point D to point B, we have Pareto optimality. If we move from point D to point E, we have Pareto optimality. Okay, now how about if we move from point D to point A? What about that? Is that Pareto optimality? So point D is, remember, 4 computers and 4 clothing, but point A has 9 computers and 2 clothings. So now if you see, the number of clothing has gone down. So although we are increasing the number of computers, what is the expense? We are giving up more clothes for that. So there is an opportunity cost here. So in this case, this is not a Pareto optimality. If we move from point D to point A, that is not a Pareto optimality. Okay, so point D to point A, not Pareto optimality, because there is opportunity cost at this time. Okay, how about if we move from point D to point C? Again, point D has 4 computers and 4 clothing. Point C has 10 clothing but only 2 computers, so the number of computers is going down. So even if we move from point D to point C, there is an opportunity cost, so it is not Pareto optimality. So if we move from point D to point C or point D to point A, that does not represent Pareto optimality, because there is opportunity cost. We are gaining the output at the expense of someone else. But if we look at point D to point E or point D to point B, here both the output are increasing. It's maximizing everyone's satisfaction, so there is no opportunity cost and we are achieving Pareto optimality. Another thing is also, if we move from, let's say, point E to point C, that is not Pareto optimality. Although we are productively efficient, but it does not represent Pareto optimality. The reason is there is opportunity cost, because we are, in order to gain more clothing from 8 to 10, we are giving up more computers. So whenever we are going to have opportunity cost, we will not have Pareto optimality. And whenever we are going to move from an inefficient point to an efficient point, given the output of both the products increase, only then we are going to have Pareto optimality. Like if you see, from point D to point C, we are moving from an inefficient to efficient point, but it's still not Pareto optimality, because the output has not increased for both the goods. So there's opportunity cost. So hopefully that clarifies what Pareto optimality means, and hopefully you guys are clear on what it means. Okay, and the slide gives you more explanations on what I just told you. Okay, so an efficient economy usually has some characteristics, and it assumes that there is the invisible hand. So there is competition in the market, and that is only possible when these characteristics are present in the market. When there are many buyers and many sellers, they are freely allowed to participate in the market. So there's a large number of buyers, large number of sellers, and they can freely interact. Okay, that's first. Second, no one consumer or producer is able to influence the price. So not a single producer or not a single consumer can come and control the price in the market. Okay, that's number 2 characters. Number 3 is any producer can enter or leave the market. So anytime if a producer wants, they can exit the market. Anytime a producer wants, they can enter the market. So barriers to entry is low. The fourth one is Prices and costs are fully incurred by consumers and producers. So consumers pay full price and producers pay full price of cost of production. And lastly, allocations are done or rationed by price through mechanisms of supply and demand. Okay, if we have, the economy will adjust automatically, which will ultimately determine the price, which will and based on the price we will allocate the resources accordingly. So that's what we are trying to say in the next slide, that in the market, in order to achieve efficiency, dynamic adjustments will take place. Basically, market will adjust automatically. So let's say if the quantity supplied is greater in the than the quantity demanded in the market, then what will happen? If quantity supply is greater, that means supply is greater than demand. So there is oversupply in the market, and as a result, suppliers will reduce the price until equilibrium is achieved. We saw this in the last lecture also. Vice versa is also true. Okay, couple of things. A free market demand line is comprised of consumers willing to pay a full price, and the supply line includes all societal cost of production. Okay, so what do we mean by full price? Full price means all factors of production, that is land, labor, capital and entrepreneurship related to price, are paid by the consumer. So when consumer is paying the price for a good, let's say I'm paying for a water bottle, I'm paying for the labor, I'm paying for the land, I'm paying for the capital, and I'm paying for the entrepreneurs needed to make that water bottle. Okay, and then when I say producers pay the full cost, that also means that all the cost of the factors of production, land, labor, cost and entrepreneurs related to production, are paid by the suppliers. When we pay all the when we consumers pay all the cost of the factor, all the price of the factors of production, on the other hand the suppliers pay all the cost of the factors of production, then we are said to have that the price has been paid fully, or the cost has been paid fully in the economy. Now, in a free market economy, we can have a difference between price and value. Okay, usually price, and in an equilibrium market, when quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, price is always equals to value. So remember this, when the market is in equilibrium, price will always be equal to the value of the good. Okay, whatever the value of the good, we are going to pay the value, we are going to pay for that. Okay, but if the market is in disequilibrium, then we're going to have a situation where price is different than the value. Okay, value is basically what consumers are willing to pay for additional satisfaction, and price is the actual charge that they pay for the additional benefit. So value is also known as the opportunity cost in economics. Consumer value is what consumers are willing to give up for other goods to receive a product. So what we are willing to give up to receive a product, what other goods we are willing to give up. So that's the value. Okay, and for producers, value is what suppliers are willing to supply of a good and not produce something else with the same resources. So when producers are producing something, let's say they are producing wheat, they are giving up the production of rice. Okay, so that is value, the opportunity cost. On the other hand, price for both groups is what is paid and is determined through the market. So whatever the price is in the market, that is what it is paid. And in efficient market, when we have an equilibrium market, value is always equal to price. Okay, let's do a quick example. Assume you decide to buy a lunch at a fast food market. Okay, let's say you decide you will go to Walmart or you will go to McDonald's and you will buy a meal today, and the price of that lunch meal is $8.5. Now your purchase means, when you're using $8.5 to buy that lunch meal, what it means that you are willing to give up $8.5 of other goods to get that lunch, just marginal benefit. So you are getting this additional benefit of McDonald's lunch meal by giving up other goods, right? With that $8.5 you probably could have bought pizza, or with that $8.5 you probably could have bought Chinese food. So you are giving up those things in order to gain the additional benefit from the lunch meal of McDonald's. Okay, so the value you place on the lunch is value added. Now if the lunch is fully priced and allocated at 8.5, and you give up spending the 8.5 for other goods, in that case price is equal to your value. Okay, so when you are, if the price is 8.5 and you actually value the price of the lunch as 8.5, then both price and value are equal, and then we are going to have an equilibrium situation from the consumer side. Now let's see how on the producer side. Let's say, you know, McDonald's is making the lunch meal and they are charging a price of $8.5. okay, that is the value they are putting for the lunch. Okay, at this point, because the producer was willing to make this lunch and not make other goods with these resources, so McDonald's have decided that they will, with $8.5, they are going to make a burger, fries and a drink. Okay, they have not decided to make a sandwich, or they have not decided to make a pizza or a dessert item. Okay, so that is what it is. You know, so for suppliers, the marginal cost is the additional cost to produce one more lunch item or unit of good. So as long as marginal cost as value is the major criteria suppliers use to determine whether or not to produce an additional good. So as long as price is greater than marginal cost, they will produce the good. If marginal cost is less than the price, then they are incurring losses and they will not produce the good. Okay, so let me do this example and show it to you in a table, so you guys are clear what I'm trying to say. So let's say we are given with a table. Okay, we have price. Oh, that's pretty thick. Let me make it less thick. Okay, and then on the left hand side, let's say we have quantity demanded, and on the right hand side we have quantity supplied. Okay, and let's say this is for the lunch we are looking for, the McDonald's lunch we are looking at. So when price of that lunch is $10, demand is 0, quantity supplied, now suppliers would want to pay supply more because they are getting higher prices, but we don't want to pay $10 for a McDonald's lunch, so that's why quantity demanded is 0. When price is reduced to 9.5, now supply will go down as per the law of supply and demand will go up as per the law of demand. Then we have 9, then we have the 8.5 which we charge 3, then we have 8, 7.5 and 7, and we are given with 2, 4, 1, 5, 0, 6. Okay, so this is what is given to you. This table is given to you, and if you look at this table again, we said we are willing to pay 8.5, and at this time you can see your quantity demanded is equal to your quantity supplied. So we are at an equilibrium situation, and in this case your price is equals to your value, which is also equals to your marginal benefit and your marginal cost. So at this price, at $8.5, the market is in equilibrium, quantity demanded is equal to quantity supplied, the price that consumers are paying will be equal to the additional satisfaction that they are receiving, and the price that suppliers are receiving will be equal to their marginal cost. So this is the equilibrium situation. Now how about in this case? In these cases, if price is $10 or if price is 9.5 or price is $9, what do you think is happening from the producer side? From the producer side, if you see in this case, price is greater than the marginal cost, right? They are making more money here. That's why they want to produce more, because prices have gone up. They are producing more because price is greater than marginal cost. On the other hand, from the producer side here, price is actually greater than the marginal benefit, right? So you are paying more than the additional satisfaction that you are receiving. In this case, only few people are demanding because you're paying more than the additional satisfaction. That's why nobody wants to buy it. Okay, so that's why price is greater than marginal benefit. Here price is greater than marginal cost. On the other side, if we go below the equilibrium price, in this case price is less than marginal cost, and in this case price is less than marginal benefit, right? When price is less than marginal benefit, it is good for the consumers. That's why every time the price is going down, their demand is going up, so their satisfaction is going up, so they are happy. Okay, on the other hand, suppliers are now not interested because the price they are charging is less than their additional cost that they are incurring, so they are making losses. So that's why they will not, their supply or their production is going down as we decrease the prices. So that's how you will classify, and that's how, you know, only in this scenario price is equal to value, but in these scenarios price and value are differentiated, and in economics we have to know that. Okay, so if consumers are willing to give up the same amount as the market price, then we have a situation where price is equal to value equals to additional satisfaction is equal to marginal benefit. And if price and cost are fully incurred with no subsidies or grants given to consumer suppliers, the market will allocate efficiently, and at that point price will be equal to marginal cost. So at equilibrium we will always have price is equal to marginal cost equals marginal benefit, and output will be maximized. Okay, so marginal benefit has a relationship with demand line, and marginal cost has a relationship with the supply curve. Okay, so each point on the consumer demand line is the amount of value related to the opportunity cost that consumers are willing to forego of other consumption in order to gain more of a product. So if we look at a demand curve, what we are trying to say is so we know a demand curve is downward sloping. Okay, so let's say that's a demand curve, and let's say this is, you know, 4, 6, this is 5, 5, this is, let's say, 6. Okay, so what it's saying is each point on the demand curve represents the marginal benefit, okay, the additional satisfaction that we gain and we give up the other items. Similarly, each point on the supply curve, again we know supply curve is upward sloping, 4 and 5, let's say 5 and 6, and let's say 6 and 7. So each of these points represents the marginal cost, which is the additional cost that suppliers incur in order to give up the production of other goods and services. That's exactly what we are trying to say here. Okay, now the point at which marginal benefit is equal to the marginal cost is the market clearing price. But if we have a situation where marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, what that means is additional cost is less than additional benefit and a higher quantity can be produced, so there is inefficiency. So when marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, we are going to have a shortage in the market, and that's why there's going to be inefficiency. In the case if marginal cost is greater than marginal benefit, that is basically additional cost is less than additional benefit is less than additional cost, so in that case we are going to have overproduction or a surplus, and therefore we are going to have an inefficiency in the market. Whenever marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, or whenever marginal benefit is less than marginal cost, we are going to have inefficiency in the market because of overproduction or underproduction. That leads us to the new concept, which is very important, of consumer surplus and producer surplus. Okay, so consumer surplus is when a consumer values the additional product at a price values the additional product at a value more than the price, then consumer surplus is present. So again, let me give you an example. Let's say there is a water bottle and you pay $2 for it. Okay, that's the price you're paying, but you as a consumer think the value should be $3. You are willing to pay up to $3. So there is a difference between price and value. So whenever there is a difference between price and value, we are going to have consumer surplus. Again, if we go back to the example of the lunch, if I pay $8.5 for the McDonald's lunch, but I think the value of the lunch is actually $10, then consumer surplus is present because there is a difference between price and value. Okay, now the difference between the value and the price is known as consumer surplus, and I'm gonna do an example on how to calculate consumer surplus. But first, let me explain you what producer surplus means. Again, producer surplus is from the producer side, from the business side, whenever there is a difference between supplier's additional value and the market price, then there is producer surplus. Let's say, again, let's think about the water bottle. The price they are charging in the market is $2, but in reality they think the price should be $1.5 or $1. Then there is a difference between what is the value they think of the water bottle is and what price they are charging. And whenever there is a difference between price and value, and from the producer side, we are going to have producer surplus. Okay, now I want to do an example with a graph so you clearly understand how to calculate producer surplus and consumer surplus. This is very important in microeconomics. You need to know how you can calculate producer surplus and consumer surplus. Okay, let's go back to this example. You know, the example of the McDonald's lunch. Okay, so let's say this table is given to you. Now using this table, let us draw the demand and supply curve, and then let me show you how you can calculate the consumer surplus and producer surplus. Okay, so based on this graph, based on the information on the graph, you can see, and we're going to plot the demand and supply curve on the same graph. We know that the demand curve is downward sloping, supply curve is upward sloping. Now from the table above we saw the equilibrium is at $8.5, right? This is where your quantity demand, quantity supplied are equal. So this is the point where the demand curve is intersecting with the supply curve. So this is 3 and this point is 8.5. Okay, now when we talk about consumer surplus, this area, okay, this triangle from the equilibrium point to the point where the demand curve intersects the y-axis, this shaded area represents consumer surplus. Okay, and producer surplus is basically this line, then we go down and the point where the supply line intersects the y-axis. So this whole area, this whole inverted triangle is the producer surplus. Okay, so that's how you will calculate consumer surplus and producer surplus. You can calculate the area of the consumers of this triangle and calculate the area of this triangle, and you can figure out what is consumer surplus and what is producer surplus. Okay, so again, consumer surplus is basically the area of the triangle. Okay, and similarly, producer surplus is the area of the inverted triangle. Okay, this area represents producer surplus. Now we have the numbers, so we can actually calculate the area and figure out what the consumer surplus is and producer surplus is in this specific example. So you know, we already know this point is 8.5, and we already know this is 3 and this is 0. So we just need to find out the place, what is this point and what is this point. Then we can easily calculate the area. So what is the point when, what is the price when demand is equal to 0? Because at this point your quantity demanded is 0. So if you go up and see if we have that information, so when price is equals to 10, if you see, your quantity demanded is 0, right? So we can say this point is $10, and if you look at here, when price is $7, your supply is 0. So that's where it is, you know, where the supply curve intersects. So what is the price when supply is equal to 0? And from the table we know the price when it's $7, supply is 0, so this is 7. So we now have all the information. Let's calculate the consumer surplus. So first look at consumer surplus. Okay, area of the triangle is given by half times base times height. Okay, so half, base is this one, so from 0 to 3, so 3 minus 0 times height. Now what is the height of this triangle? This is the height of the triangle, so that is 10 minus 8.5. okay, so that means half times 3 times 1.5 is equals to 2.25. that is your consumer surplus. Okay, now let's calculate producer surplus, the area of this inverted triangle. So again, the area should be half into base times height, because that's the area. Now if you look at the base is still 3, and the height now is 8.5 minus 7, because here it's intersecting at 7. If you go back to the graph, you will understand how I got those numbers. Times 3 times 1.5 is it also comes out to be 2.25. Now in this case, the producer surplus and consumer surplus are equal, but not necessarily they will be equal. Okay, so you need to know that in this scenario they are equal, but not every time producer surplus and consumer surplus will be equal. But that is how we are going to calculate consumer surplus and producer surplus from a graph. Okay, so moving on, at market equilibrium, efficiency and consumer and producer surplus are maximized. So when we have when we are at an equilibrium, again go back to this graph, when we are at the equilibrium, consumer surplus is maximized, producer surplus is also maximized. Okay, so equilibrium, both of these will be maximized. However, when there is a market disequilibrium, the total surplus is not realized. We are going to have inefficiency, and producer surplus and consumer surplus will go down, and that will eventually cause market failure or inefficiency, and that is known as dead weight loss. Okay, so any price level other than the equilibrium price will create dead weight inefficiency in the market. And I want to show you, and I want to explain what dead weight loss is, and I want to show you using a graph. Okay, so dead weight loss will happen if marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, okay, or if marginal benefit is less than marginal cost. Okay, in that scenario we are going to have dead weight loss. So if marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, then we have underproduction, and we are going to have a dead weight loss, and I'm going to show it to you in terms of a graph. And if marginal benefit is less than marginal cost, then we are going to have overproduction, and there will be surplus in the market. Okay, so let me show it to you in terms of a graph, so you guys are clear and you guys know how to label a dead weight loss. Okay, so let's look at a scenario where marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost. Okay, so again, we know we have a demand curve, we have a supply curve. Okay, and we know this is the equilibrium. Okay, so we know, let's say this is the equilibrium. Okay, now we are saying marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost. In this scenario, usually the price is less. We have underproduction. In this scenario, we are going to have underproduction, which means output is less. If output is less, then this amount, let's say this is 3, but if output is less, that means price is also going to be lower, right? So we are probably going to be at a lower price. This is your supply. Your supply is going down, but your demand is going to be more, because as per the law of supply, again, if the price falls, what's happening? Your supply goes down, but your demand goes up, correct? So we are having, in this case, we are having a shortage in the market. And how are we going to find out the deadweight loss? So this is how you're going to do. So this is your new price. So you draw a straight line, and the point where it hits the supply curve, you take that point and you go up straight until it hits the demand curve, and then you go left horizontally. Okay, then from here the deadweight loss is basically this whole part. So this triangle and this triangle reflects the deadweight loss, because now your consumer surplus has decreased. Your consumer surplus is this part, and because your price is here, so your consumer surplus will all the way be up to here, but from here, and your producer surplus will be diminished very much. So your producer surplus will be only this small portion. Okay, so this is producer surplus, this is consumer surplus, and this is your deadweight loss. Basically we are losing output because the market is not in equilibrium. So the green portion represents deadweight loss, the purple portion represents consumer surplus, and the yellow portion represents producer surplus. And this is the scenario we're going to have when marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, and when we have a scenario under production. You know, again, demand is more than the supply, so we have underproduction in the market, and we're going to have this deadweight loss. Now how about the opposite scenario? What happens if we have marginal cost is greater than marginal benefit? In that case we are going to have overproduction. And how do we show that in the graph? So let's say again, this is your demand curve, this is your supply curve, we know this is the equilibrium. Okay, we know this is the equilibrium. Now we are saying we have overproduction. What that means is probable price is greater than the equilibrium price. So this is, let's say, 3, and we have this is 4. What's happening here? The demand is now less, but supply is more. So we have surplus scenario in this case, right? We have extra output out there. But how do we calculate the deadweight loss in this scenario? How do you calculate the deadweight loss in this scenario? In this scenario, again, let me label your deadweight loss. How you will calculate is you draw the graph, you draw the line where we are, where the price is. Let's say the price is 4, so we draw the line until it hits the supply curve again. Remember, for you also in the first one we hit where the supply line is, so always go on until it hits the supply line, then go down. This time go down vertically until it hits the demand curve, and then come back where it hits the price axis. So this triangle, these two triangles represents deadweight loss. Okay, and in this case your producer surplus is increased. Okay, this whole thing is your producer surplus, but consumer surplus is diminished because now demand is less, and this is small portion reflects consumer surplus. So you, as students of microeconomics, you need to know what deadweight loss is. Deadweight loss is when there is a disequilibrium in the market and either price is greater than the equilibrium price or price is less than the equilibrium price, which means we will have either of the scenario: marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, or marginal cost is greater than marginal benefit. Okay, and in these scenarios we can have underproduction and overproduction, which will eventually create deadweight loss in the society. That is how we will figure out the deadweight loss in the society and the producer surplus and consumer surplus. So hopefully that gives you a better idea about how the economy is losing the output when we have underproduction or overproduction. Okay, so a market failure exists when a resource allocation remains at surplus or shortage. When there is a shortage, inefficiency occurs due to inability to increase output. So basically, when we have a shortage, there is underproduction and inefficiency occurs because we cannot increase output. And when we have a surplus, inefficiency happens because of overproduction, because we cannot decrease the output away. Okay, and when this happens in the short term, it is known as maladjustments, but if it happens in the long run, it is known as the market failure. Okay, and an example would be, this would happen when the government sets the rent price, property price, like price floor or price ceiling, the minimum wage legislations. These will create disequilibrium in the market and will cause inefficiencies. Now there are 4 different types of market failures, okay, or these are the 4 reasons why we can have a market failure. The first one is a monopoly, the second one is externality, third one is government regulations and taxes, and fourth one is called moral hazard. Okay, so monopoly means when there is a single firm or when there is a single business providing the output and there is no competition in the market. In this case, monopoly will always produce a lower output and the price will be at a very higher point. So when there is lower output, there is underproduction. That means marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost and there will be deadweight loss to the society. So that will cause market inefficiency and market failure in the long run. Now an exception would be a natural monopoly. A natural monopoly occurs when when there is a supplier, they come up with an innovation and discovery. They're in their very initial stages and they're protected by the government because of government permits. Okay, a natural monopoly is a market where there are economies of scale. Basically we will learn about economies of scale means, but what it means is the average cost decreases as you increase the output, and that's what natural monopoly means. Okay, by having only one producer in the market, average cost will be lower than if several firms competed in the market. If others came in, then their average cost would go up. So in that case, we are not going to have a natural monopoly. Example, you can think about the city bus service. If we had other private firms providing bus services, then what would have happened? The cost of that service would go up, prices will go up, and therefore the benefits will go down. Therefore, the Dallas city provided a monopoly status to DART, so that they are the ones who are responsible for providing public transportation in the Dallas area, and that's a natural monopoly because they are trying to protect that, and their cost decreases as they produce more output. But if other firms start coming in, then there will be competition and price will go up. Okay, another example would be if government grants a monopoly status. Let's say a pharmaceutical company, let's say, comes up with the vaccine for COVID-19, and then the government can give a copyright or give a trademark or a patent to this firm so that they are protected. They can develop it further and take it to the end stage, and there is not enough competition. Once that business is established and once that product is established in the market, the government can deregulate it and then allow competition to come in, which will eventually cause efficiency in the market. Okay, the second reason is market externalities. Market externalities cause failures. Negative externality or positive externalities can cause market failures. Now externalities exist in market where third parties not directly part of the transaction are impacted by an economic transaction of 2 or more parties. Okay, so what it's trying to say is, let's say I am buying a good from Tom and I'm paying for that good, but because of this transaction, others in the area are affected positively or negatively. That is known as externality. Okay, if the others are affected positively, then it's called positive externality, or they're also known as merit goods. If others are affected negatively, then it is called negative externality or demerit goods, and these can cause market failures and inefficiency. Okay, because when externalities are present, prices do not reflect the total cost or total benefits. So there is a difference between price and value. The full cost or full price is not paid, which eventually cause inefficiency in the market. Or spillover costs and benefits. And spillover benefits are called merit goods, and spillover costs are called demerit goods, which decrease the welfare. Now example of merit good is public expenditure for education, right? Let's say if the government is paying scholarship for students, what happens is more students are becoming educated, receiving bachelor's and master's degree, and when they are graduating, they are coming out into the economy and providing more services, which is providing more welfare to the society, right? And educated people are more likely to be employed. They will have increase the output in the society. They will pay more taxes, and as a result, overall the welfare of the society will go up. So that's an example of merit good or positive externality. Okay,
An example of demerit good or negative externality would be, let's say I buy something and because of that third parties are affected negatively. Again, let's say I buy a Toyota car from a Toyota dealership, I pay for the price, we are happy, but when I'm driving the car, I'm creating pollution and I'm creating traffic which affects the third parties or the people in that area negatively. Okay, so these are market externalities, demerit or negative externalities, or merit or positive externalities, which can create inefficiency in the market, which eventually causes market failure. Okay, now government has regulations that they can use to correct these. Government can correct negative externalities through regulations and taxes and fines. Okay, on the other hand, government can correct or government can increase positive externalities through grants and subsidies. Okay, because positive externality is good for the society, so government can increase this through subsidies or providing more financial aid or grants. In case of negative externalities, they can decrease it through regulation, taxes and fines. Okay, now government regulations or taxes decrease supply and increase prices. The decreased quantity reduces the demerit externality. So let me do the graph so you guys understand quickly what I'm trying to say, how government can come in and fix this. So let's say we have we have a situation where this is the supply curve, this is the demand curve. Okay, but for some reason the market is operating here. We know the equilibrium is here, but let's say the market is actually operating here at this point. So what the government can come is, again, let's say when I said government can impose taxes, supply will go down. Let's say I'm buying cars from the Toyota dealership, but now the government imposes a new tax on Toyota. Like if they have to sell, if they have to sell the Toyota, they have to pay additional taxes to the government. In that case, supply will decrease. As taxes decrease affects supply curve, and supply curve will shift to the right and it will move to the left. Okay, and then here we create the new equilibrium that reduces the negative externality, and that way we can remove, or government can remove the negative externality. Similarly, government can create positive externality. Let's say we again have a demand and supply curve, and let's say the market is actually operating here, whereas this is the equilibrium. In this case, the government can give subsidies increase supply curve will shift to the right, and we come to this equilibrium. So this is in case of subsidies, which is in case of positive externalities or more merit goods. So hope that helps you how the government can correct negative externality or positive externality and bring about more welfare in the society. Okay, the final type of market failure is moral hazard. Again, it is a type of negative externality. It is created by individuals, who shifts economic risk by so when I assume an act, I shift the economic risk to others. Okay, so when risks are individually taken but potential economic losses are transferred to another party. So what's happening is, because I am taking a risk, as an individual I'm taking a risk, but because of my action others are also negatively affected. So that's how you can see it's a negative externality, but there are losses to other people. Now an example would be in the healthcare industry, right? So let's say I or individuals choose to smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol in excess. What happens is, for that individual the insurance premium will go up because he's taking too much cigarette or alcohol, but overall in the economy this risk will be shifted to the public through higher insurance premium or public hospital care, because of my actions others will also have to pay higher insurance premium. So when this risky behavior is borne by others, a moral hazard exists, and that will cause market failure. Okay, so there are other allocations in our economy without the competition of the market system to ensure efficiency against market failure. Since public expenditures are not rationed by forces of supply and demand, government goods cannot be allocated through a market system. So here we are trying to talk about public goods. Public goods are goods that are provided by the government. These public goods are
not present in a competitive market. We do not pay a price for it. Suppliers are not competing with one another to provide these types of goods to us. Okay, the goods that we buy from Walmart, or the goods that the producers compete for, are called private goods. But public goods or services that are provided by the government for very little charge or no charge at all. Okay, and there are some characteristics of public goods. The first characteristic of private, or the two characteristics of public goods are they are non-rival and they are non-exclusive. Okay, these characteristics are not present in private goods. So when you go to Walmart and buy a water bottle, that these characteristics are not there. When you go to a Best Buy and buy a laptop, they are rival and they are exclusive. But public goods, and I will give you an example what public goods are basically non-rival and non-exclusive. So what does non-exclusive mean? Non-exclusive means that if I am using the good, doesn't mean that it is not available to you. If I am getting the benefit from a good, you as a citizen will also get the same benefit from the good. Okay, example would be street lights. Okay, let's say there are street lights in the city of Dallas, and if I go and stand under the street light, doesn't mean it will stop your benefit, right? You will still enjoy the benefits of the street light at the same amount as I am. So that's a public good, street light, right? It's non-exclusive. It's not exclusive to 1%, whereas private goods are exclusive. If I go to Best Buy and buy a laptop, that specific laptop will not be available to others. Okay, the other one is non-rivalry. Okay, so there is no competition. We will not compete to pay a price for street lights. We will not compete to pay or call the 911 service to bring police. If I call 911 today, the police will come or the paramedics will come to my house, and if my neighbor also calls 911, it does not mean the police will not come. There's another group of police or paramedics will come to help out. So they are non-exclusive, non-rivalry. Examples of public good would be the street lights, defense system, police services, like a lighthouse would be an example. Sheep in the area can benefit from it, because they can see the light and determine the direction. Okay, now on the other hand, private goods are exclusive. They are very in a competitive market. We go and we have to pay the price. For public goods, we don't pay any price, right? We are not competing. Okay, and it is only available to those who pay prices. We can only enjoy the benefit by paying the price. We cannot enjoy the benefit without paying the price. Example would be country club, competitive market where only members are allowed to participate. Public expenditures are largely non-excludable and non-rival, such as national defense, public health, security services, as I told you. And because of this, efficiency is a challenge for public market. There is no competition, so there we have issues, efficiency. But as long as marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, that means it's good for the people because the benefit is more than the cost. It's good for the consumers, so it's better to take that action, undertake that additional satisfaction for society. When public goods are used to enhance positive externalities, it can use cost free rider principle. Now this is another problem. Okay, public goods ultimately create free rider problem because these goods are non-exclusive and non-rival. Okay, so what is free rider? Some people will pay for it and enjoy the benefit, while others will not at all pay for it but still enjoy the benefit. So that's a free rider free rider problem. There are some people in the society that will not pay for these goods, but they will still enjoy the benefits. An example would be, when someone rides free on public transportation while I go and pay for my dark service. So that would be a free rider problem. Government is providing, the city is providing these services. I am paying $2 for the service, but someone else just gets onto the train and just hides and does not pay for the ticket. Then that's a free rider problem. Another example would be, let's say the government builds a road to a seldom used area, and nobody rarely uses that. So that, and only I use that, but others don't use that. So that would be a free rider problem. Okay, but as long as marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, it makes sense for the government to undertake that action. But if marginal cost becomes greater than marginal benefit, it does not make sense. Then we are going to have negative externality. Okay, so the microeconomic principle, the economic principles in general says, government should not be involved too much. A low cost of government is not the economic goal. The ultimate economic goal is to maximize consumer satisfaction. Okay, so we should keep that in mind when we are looking at the theory. So like there's a Coase theory, it suggests that a free market will ultimately align itself better than the government. So what Coase theory says is that government should not interfere in the market. The market should be left alone. Competition alone itself in the market will align and make sure goods and services are provided to everyone. Okay, and they are saying when government intervenes in the market, we ultimately have more costs, and as a result we have market failure. The Coase theory also says, like beekeepers, consumers, and farmers can benefit from each other by working with one another. Okay, farmers benefit from bee pollination, from honey, and consumers from crop as well as honey. So they can work with one another. Different groups can, producers, suppliers, and consumers can work with one another to achieve their own welfare, to increase their own welfare. Government does not have to come and negotiate for them. If government comes, this theory says it adds additional costs that ultimately causes inefficiency. But most economists still suggest that some level of public good is necessary in the economy, and the government should intervene at some level in market. However, as long as the marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost, government should intervene. In the opposite scenario, government should stay out of the market. Okay, so that's the end of lecture 4. I know it was a little bit lengthy, but that's all. In our next class we will cover lecture 5, which we are going to talk about elasticity, price elasticity of demand. Okay, so until then, you guys take care and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.